So here we are the day after run number 3 on this 07 Cobalt, and she put on a show. She came out as second in the 4-cylinder stock that ran at Waterford, Fair, PA. Not a big class. There was 7 or 8. One of the guys I think jumped in with the 6s, so it might have started with 7, but there were 2 fresh, nasty built cars, Hetrick and Cavalier. Lucas had their fresh Cavalier, and those boys know how to build them, and they pack a punch. And you can see this girl, she took a bunch of punches, again got down to second, ended up what took me out, left the stock tank in, didn't really think it would really become an issue. Like maybe I'm like down toward the end. Well, with only 7 or 8 of us on the track, it's not a huge track, but there was just cross track after cross track, and I mean Hetrick in particular, but really all 7 of us. I think one guy went out fairly quickly, and then the rest of us for at least 10 minutes were just flying into each other. So she did great. Ended up, sorry my voice is a little scratchy here, but ended up putting on the stock airbox off of the 05 Cobalt, which again this plastic intake was off of because I put my core support through the one that was on this car, but ended up idling a little bit better with that airbox in there, just a tiny bit, but still spitting, sputtering. But again, once you got in the throttle, it took off. And as you can see, again, if you watch my before making video, I said this right here is kind of my danger line. Once it gets pressed to there, I'm now pressing on the tank, and you can see it pressed into and through. And in fact, that's what ultimately took us out. I went so far in that it, you can see here, see if I can get a view, that it punched down the fuel, pushed into the fuel tank and punched down the fuel lines. And you can see that right there, that was leaking fuel. I believe it was that one of the lines is leaking fuel. I believe that is it. I believe that's the fuel line. I don't believe this one has a return line, but you can see how it should be straight like this. It is pressed in. She took a beating, big hits, good show, but again, the car ran great. You'll notice the hood is off. I, for the first time, ran a car without a hood. Did that not only because I knew she was going to get hot. You can see I have the line looped, which worked fabulously, by the way. Shout out to Chevets for finally getting me to loop the lines correctly. But I also let that air out, and the GSP boys, the promoters, don't mind that at all. Some promoters do, I guess. But did great. I was able to keep the nose clean. You can see a couple times got pressed into. Just a little bit, more defense. A guy, whenever I was putting a hit on, kind of came around another car and got a little bit into me, but nothing too bad. I was actually put up almost, I was a little bit fortunate, almost put up on a barrier. In fact, I think what saved me are the teeth, as I've been calling them, underneath, because Hetrick put a huge run on me. I was probably 10 feet from the barrier. He hit me so hard and then stayed on the throttle. It drove me, as I'm on the brakes and then I got on the gas in reverse, drove me over. They have blocks there. And my rebar slid over, like I could feel it and tell, but I'm pretty sure if I didn't have those, I might have been hung up to where my tires were in the air, and that was maybe 5 or 6 minutes into a 15+ minute feature. So a little fortunate there, but man, what a run. You can see the tires a little bit pointing out. So this tie rod, the inner tie rod bent, you can see it there. And CV shaft still stayed engaged. Those aluminum spindles still kept going. Just got pressed into one time a little bit whenever there's a lot of traffic in the middle, and that must have been when he pressed, and it just, fortunate that it just bent that tie rod and didn't put all that pressure on the aluminum spindle, because those things break or the strut rip out or any of that. So still runs. Does it have another run in us? We're not sure yet. I need to drop the tank anyways to take that stock fuel cell out so I can run it in my 05 Cobalt that I still have, and might do that, put it in my derby tank, and then see if she fires up. And if she does, all she needs is a tie rod, and she's ready to go again. I mean, she's going to be sliding on the back, but still a lot of life in that motor. It was still ripping around. I just ruptured the fuel line. I could smell the fuel, and I was like, yeah, the battery terminal actually popped off on a hit. and then I put it on and smelled it, started to turn over, and then I actually turned the key off and pulled the battery terminals. I said, yeah, I'm definitely into the fuel tank. I need to shut her down. But I want to point out, if you're someone like me and don't know how to properly loop the lines, it is this simple. This guy here is all you need, and it worked great. Here you can see I just had a clamp put on my overflow, if you will, that runs out here. Ended up taping it too, just to make sure it stayed on there, and then I just zip tied it there. Had a little bit of overflow as she was really getting hot and cooking, but again, just zip tied it so it's a little bit out of the way. I probably should have shortened that hose where it runs in there so that it wasn't so far out and I didn't have to tie it up, but the zip ties worked fine. I just doubled up a couple. And again, it didn't want to idle, but boy, when she got in the throttle, she took off. So good show. I mean, again, you can see my roof sign got collapsed in. The GoPro stayed on. You can see that there, how beat up it is. And again, anyone that derbies knows, once they're packed in like this, I mean, she is hard now. So ratchet strap, wheel to wheel, pull them in a little bit. I would definitely put a rear bar behind here just to make sure nothing presses any further. I've had that happen before in a car. I didn't put a bar in, and I'm fortunate that it didn't get into me. But yeah, she did great. She is a half car now in essence. Still has life in her, so we'll see what comes of it. But this is second place. Again, wasn't a huge car turnout for the feature, or really in general for the Derby, but the four-cylinder boys, we put on a show. There was big hitting everywhere, and everyone after was saying what a great show it was. So that makes you happy and kind of proud to be a part of it. So second place, third run. This girl has 2 second places on her now, and we'll see what happens, but she's a tough old girl.